our American government. In the early days, political debates were held in theaters and lecture halls across America, like this one, drawing large crowds from every corner of society. Now we engage with the candidates through TV screens and Twitter feeds, watching as the elections unfold.
The spotlight may be on the top contenders, but it's really about the people. Today we're going to talk about our role in this important election process.
By understanding where elections came from and how they work, you can help determine who will be in the room when our nation's most important decisions are being made. Today's lawmakers are tomorrow's history shapers. I'm David Barton.
I'm Tim Barton, and this is Elections. We're going to talk about elections, but before we really can even get there, we have to ask the question, how does government really work? Because we know in America we have 3 branches of government, but are they really co-equal, or is one more powerful? Can the president just make laws, executive orders, or does the U.S. Supreme Court really get to determine whatever is legal or not legal in America? The reason it matters that we understand how this works is, as Christians, if we're going to make a difference in this country, we need to know how the process works so we can get involved in the process.
Yeah, knowing the process really is important. As you even go back in the scriptures, and Timothy, it talks about that a runner who runs in a race, he really wants to win the prize, but it says, but you have to run according to the rules to get the crown, to get the prize. And so in our constitutional republic that we have, if you don't know how it operates, if you don't know the rules, you can't be effective. And we want to have an influence on the leaders we choose and the policies they make. And by the way, we are a constitutional republic. So right off the bat, we're not a democracy, which is a really good thing. We're not a democracy. We're not even a republic. And a republic's okay, but in a republic, you elect leaders and they make the top policies. We're a constitutional republic, so we elect leaders to uphold the top policy, which is our Constitution, and under the Constitution, they get to make laws. So we really have the best of all systems of human government that's available in the world.
Yeah, and this is something that we remember looking back, that the Founding Fathers outlined in the Declaration that there was fixed moral laws. God's already told us what's right and wrong, and below that, we acknowledge that He created us all equal, and so this level of the way we treat people, and there's not classes, there's not systems, we all are equal under the law, and really equal in God's eyes too, and God has given us rights, and government's job is to protect those rights. This is what we see as the primary function and role of government, and as you're mentioning, we're a constitutional republic. That's really what the Constitution upholds, is this notion that we're going to protect the rights of the individuals. In fact, not only from the Constitution, when you go forward, after the Constitution, when the first Congress is formed, one of their jobs was to write a Bill of Rights. And when they wrote the Bill of Rights, it's interesting the way they wrote it, because they wrote the Bill of Rights as a list of negative liberties, if you will, in the sense that these are things the government can never touch. They didn't say these are the rights that people have and these are the only rights. They said these are specific rights the government can never violate and can never take away. So it was a listing of things the government can never step on, rights that the people have.
Yeah, the Bill of Rights was actually a listing or a recognition of many of our God-given inalienable rights, because the founder said these are rights that come from God, therefore they can't be regulated by government. So in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment recognizes 5 God-given inalienable rights. Now, the first one is the right of religion. And then we've got press and speech and assembly and petition, but the first one is religion. And it's not that it says, government, you get to allow people to have religious expression. It's, no, the people get to have religious expression. Government, you can't interfere with that. You can't say, for example, that churches are not essential services. The Constitution's already said they are. The Second Amendment gives us 2 rights that government can't touch. We have the right to defend ourselves individually and collectively. The Third Amendment says government can't set up shop in your home. Your home is your place. And then the Fourth through the Eighth Amendments are what we call due process amendments that deals with justice. And the Bible is all about justice. And so the right to confront your accuser. I mean, this is something we take back to Proverbs 18 and John 8. This is the reason we get to hear the other side of the story when someone makes a charge. All of these things in the Bill of Rights were recognition of rights that God gave to the people, and the government saying, all right, since God gave you that, we're not messing with it, that belongs to you. And you need to elect leaders who understand that. If leaders think that they give rights, then they're going to try to regulate the rights that God gave you. If you understand that I need leaders who already know that these are God-given rights and they can't touch them, That's a huge difference in understanding the process and electing people who will uphold that process.
Yeah, and looking at the fact that we acknowledge in America, you have God-given rights. Government cannot violate those rights. It's interesting when you start looking even at our form of government, because that's kind of philosophy. Our philosophy is you have rights, government can't violate those rights, but the form of government even has its roots in some biblical thoughts from Isaiah. It says that the Lord is our lawgiver. He's our judge, he's our king. Well, there were three different distinct functions that Isaiah recognized. God has different capacities he does. It's very different in different areas. Well, in America, we said, okay, we're gonna have a president, the executive branch. We're gonna have a Congress, the lawgivers, a legislative branch, and we're gonna have the judicial branch where our judges are gonna be. And this was the way our system too was set up. And even looking at the system, knowing it comes from almost this Bible idea, it's interesting. Today we hear so often that there are co-equal branches.
Yeah.
And this is what it seemingly everybody says, except if you look at the Constitution, it doesn't really seem like they're co-equal in the Constitution.
No, it's not. And the Constitution is very good about telling each branch what it can do. And so Article 1 of the Constitution says, okay, Congress, here's your stuff. Here's what you can address. Here's what you can pass laws on. And the second article is, Mr. President, here's what you get to do. And the third article is, judges, here's what the federal judiciary does. So the Constitution makes very clear three silos, if you will. These are distinct areas, and this is what you get to do, and you don't get to do the other stuff. So judges don't get to make law. Not only do judges not get to make law, the president doesn't get to make law. He can issue executive orders, but it can't be laws that he issues. He can say, all right, under the law, this is how we apply it, but only Congress gets to make laws.
And specifically, so under executive orders, there are things he can say, we're going to do this, but he can only make laws, so to speak, of what falls under his distinct jurisdiction. And so when you look at the executive branch, they're the ones that execute the law, the ones that enforce the laws. So he actually can say, this is how we're going to enforce the law. And you might argue, well, he just passed a law. Well, he can pass it if it's in his sphere of jurisdiction, but not when it comes to president. Can't dictate what the speed limit's going to be. That's out of his jurisdiction. That is what the legislative branch would do.
And so when you look at the three branches, it's interesting in the Constitution, the legislative branch, which makes the law, it's the longest part of the Constitution by far. The president is the next longest portion, but the shortest part by far is about federal judges, because we don't elect federal judges. Now, some states elect their judges, but the federal judges we don't elect, so they get the least amount of power, the least amount of influence over our lives, because they're not directly accountable to us. And so understanding that helps us when we choose our leaders. If we choose a president or senator or congressman, we need to know that we need to choose people who are not going to defer to the judges and say, well, whatever the judge says, that's the law of the land. No, that's not the way the system's designed, and that's really important for us to understand when we go into elections.
Yeah, and knowing there's three branches, we recognize that that's because there was going to be a separation of powers. The founding fathers knew because sin exists, then we cannot give too much power to one group, to one organization, because they might have sinful hearts, they might do bad things. So they wanted there to be checks and balances. So they intentionally divided up those branches to make sure there would be that separation of power, so one branch couldn't tell everybody in the whole United States of America what to do. But in the midst of that, we really need to do a little deeper dive into the three branches of government, and let's figure out, well, are they really co-equal, and which one really is more powerful?